Time now for our political roundtable, and joining us at the table this morning, Democratic analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican analyst Jenny Buckingham. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So let's start with the conversation with Congressman Auchincloss. Marianne, you're first. What stands out? What strikes you?
Well, the question Sherman asked. So to me, I'm like, so you're saying there's a chance?
Running for the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say no. He did anything but say no. He talked about his new endeavor, National Democrats trying to get them elected, but he never said no. He never answered the question. So I think you're on the clock, buddy.
And as Sherman framed the question, if Senator Markey decides not to run, would you? And he never said no to that.
No.
All right, Ginny.
He is choosing a harder job, though, than running for Senate. Trying to bring the Democrats to the center in this country politically is the task of that Democratic majority effort that he's in charge of. Good luck.
All right.
Good luck.
Well, some members of the state's all-Democratic congressional delegation are raising money off the government shutdown. Senator Ed Markey, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, both sending out fundraising emails pointing to the shutdown. Ginny, what is your reaction to that?
It's a really bad look, and it kind of gives lie to the fact that they're saying this is not about politics. This is about health care for Americans. Of course, it's about politics, and they're trying to capitalize on that.
What do you think, Marianne?
You know what a bad look is? Building a $350 million ballroom during the shutdown. And that's what Donald Trump's doing.
And we are going to get to that.
But now we'll get to this. There's a big upcoming impact of the shutdown. It's SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps. It will run out at the end of this week, and other states in the union are saying in November the cupboard is bare. Governor Maura Healey here in Massachusetts says the federal government provides $240 million each month to SNAP benefits in the Commonwealth. Her office says 1 million people rely on them in Massachusetts, a state population of 7 million, and 1 million people rely on it. So, Marianne, is this a topic that will force both sides eventually to negotiate?
Well, I think we also need to point to the fact that Maura Healey said they can't cover it either. Like, we cannot make up for that financial difference. So should it bring people to the table? Yes. Will it bring people to the table? No, because Donald Trump does not care. Doesn't care if kids are starving, doesn't care if they don't have food for school, doesn't care that Thanksgiving's coming up. And the sooner everybody understands that he does not care about anybody but himself, the sooner we will get this situation resolved.
Jenny?
So there's some cognitive dissonance here when they say it's Donald Trump's fault. There's one party that's holding up the government reopening, and that's the Democrats who won't vote to reopen it. And that's kind of basic facts there. I also think that the Democrats are overplaying their hand because this is a real impact right now. It's not in the distant future, near distant future. These are real people that are going to pay the price of their politics.
So Donald Trump runs the White House and is building the ballroom without any answering to anybody about anything. The Republicans run the Senate. They haven't gotten any bills passed. And the Republicans run the House, and they're not even in town. They're not even voting on anything. So to blame the Democrats is laughable. And the thing that Donald Trump is going to do is he's going to kill the SNAP program. He wants it to die. He wants huge parts of this government not only to shut down, but be shuttered forever. And that's what this is all about.
No one wants food stamps to go away. And there are 6 votes in the Senate that could happen today if they wanted. The Democrats wanted to reopen the government. They could do it today.
All right, let's talk about that renovation. All of a sudden, well, not really a renovation, rebuilding. The East Wing of the White House is gone, demolished, as President Trump continues plans to build a massive ballroom. The renovated project is now bigger and more expensive than President Trump previously let on. It's now $300 million. It was $200 million. It's a bigger footprint now. What is your reaction to this entire story? I mentioned Thom Tillis. He had said this is bad timing. What do you think?
I have 3 reactions. First of all, my stomach hurts when I look at those pictures, which I'm sure most Americans' stomach hurts. 2, the cost does concern me, and who's paying for it should be a concern to everyone. But 3, I also think people need to keep some perspective. The White House has been renovated, I read, 47 times since it was built, including very controversial things that we now adore, like the North Portico. That was a huge controversy way back in the day. The Rose Garden was a huge controversy when Jackie Kennedy built it. So I think there's some perspective is needed here as well.
What do you think, Marianne?
They're not, those examples aren't even close. It is despicable what Donald Trump has done, destroying the East Wing of the White House that has been there for 132 years without mentioning it to anybody. And it is tacky, tasteless, and it is worthy of Marie Antoinette, okay? That's that. But here's the bigger issue here. It's a national security issue. Underneath the East Wing is what's called PEOC, the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, or the bunker. That is where George Bush was on 9/11 and brought everybody down. That is where Donald Trump hid under a desk down there when the George Floyd protests were outside. That is being renovated now. And it's being renovated by the White House military. Really? Does anyone know that? Who's paying for it? Is it a national security threat? And who needs a 90,000 square bunker? So that should raise questions with everybody. You need a bunker as big as the ballroom. That is the place you would deal with nuclear weapons and war and all that. And you're going to hang out down there in a 90,000 square. There's something much bigger here. History points to it, and everybody should look into it.
Have you seen the perspective builds of it? The 90,000 square foot new construction area, someone said, makes the White House look like a garage.
Yeah.
Compared to what it is.
I do like the arch idea, though. The other thing he's proposing is doing a triumph arch near the Arlington National Cemetery. That looks beautiful.
Next item. Former Republican Senator John E. Sununu is officially jumping back into politics. He announced that he is running for the United States Senate, a seat that he did once hold. Sununu is the brother and son of former New Hampshire governors. His political return sets up high-profile primary battle with another former senator, Scott Brown. Both are commenting on the race. Listen to this. Here they are.
I've been out there every day, earning people's support, and I'm looking forward to continuing to get their support.
I have spent my whole life doing three things: solving tough problems, finding ways to work with people, even if they don't always agree with me, and standing up for New Hampshire.
Running on the Democratic side is Congressman Chris Pappas. Senator Jeanne Shaheen is retiring, and this is a seat that Republicans want to flip. Marianne, what is the thing that you are focused on in this race? What is
there are a couple things. First and foremost is who is Donald Trump going to endorse? And I think it's very likely it won't be Scott Brown, it'll be John Sununu. And that is the death knell for Brown. Sununu is going to have a tough race, because Chris Pappas is a Jeanne Shaheen type Democrat. She's a moderate. New Hampshire is like a 5-point race either way in what I would call a traditional race for New Hampshire, with a candidate like Pappas, a candidate like Sununu. Advantaged Pappas because Donald Trump is going to be hanged around John Sununu's neck.
Ginny, he's got a Sununu name.
Look, this is the National Republican Senate Committee saying we need to have a fighting chance in this race, and we don't have it with Scott Brown. They were looking at the numbers that everyone else was looking at. It is going to be a tight race, but they have a real chance now with Sununu.
We continue on the record. Stay with us.